Good evening, everyone. Good evening to those watching online. A very happy new year. It's our first talk. Is music still going on? It's our first talk of 2026, and it's lovely to see everyone here. So the topic for today is reset, realign, and renew. So a new year invites a fresh start. This evening is about pausing, resetting, and realigning what truly matters. It is an opportunity to let go of what's been holding you back, refocus your energy, and renew your vision for the year ahead. Tonight's talk will encourage you to reflect, shift your mindset, and take practical and meaningful steps forward. And for today's talk, we have got Mitesh. He has 25 years of experience in banking and finance and works as an independent mortgage and commercial broker. And he has also been a dedicated Raj Yoga meditation practitioner for the last 30 years. So we have amazing mentoring for today's talk. So I invite him on the stage.
Good evening. Everybody hear me? It's okay? So, I guess we're still in the month of January. So, I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. And if you are from Punjab or Hindu Punjabi, then I think I should say Happy Lori, because it's a festival today. Can I just check who's here for the first time? Nobody here for the first time? Okay, great. And who hasn't done the Raj Yoga meditation course? Ah, great. Everybody has. Ah, you haven't. Okay. And a warm welcome to everybody joining us online. So this evening's topic is quite an interesting one for myself, because every year around December time, especially second week of December, I normally tend to take quite a long break before I start the new year. I generally have a short break somewhere out of the country. So this year I was in Tenerife for a couple of weeks and then just came back before Christmas. And I find that this time of the year, especially that time of the year, whilst the year's ending, it's always a very good chance to understand and see how the year's gone, what you'd like to do before you start the new year. So when I was asked to talk about this particular topic, I didn't hesitate at all, and I said, yes, I'll definitely do it, because it's a topic that's very close to my heart. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll use that, and then I'll sort of guide you through what I've actually put down, and then towards the end of the presentation, if there's any questions, then we'll allow some time for questions. Is that okay? Great. So, when we look at this idea of reset, normally we think of reset as in when you reset your alarm clock that reminds you what time you need to get up. Some people use an alarm clock for meditation purposes. So I'm sure you're aware that here the Brahma Kumaris, every single hour there is a moment where you can take a pause, reflect, recharge, and then carry on doing your day-to-day activities. So reset normally is an area that is aligned with computers or an alarm clock and various other situations. It's interesting, when I was looking at the definition, it mentioned about the fact that you are taking something back to its original state. And so when I looked at this whole idea of reset, and I looked at what happens, especially I'm using a laptop here. So when you try and reset the laptop, what happens? There's always a few moments you need to wait before the computer restarts again. And so for me, this whole idea of reset means that before I look at setting goals, because in this contest here, we're looking at resetting goals. So before I set my goals, what is it that I need to sort of check within to make sure that I understand what it is that's stopping me to move forwards in achieving that particular goal that I've set. And so that's the angle I've taken this evening, to sort of understand this whole aspect of setting goals. So move on to the next slide. So the first area that I feel that would be a barrier in achieving a goal is generally doubt. It's an area that you find, especially when it's to do with things like past achievements. So as soon as you're sort of growing up in life, there might be certain failures that have happened along your journey. And generally what tends to happen is that because that's there at the back of your mind, it then stops you to move forward sometimes, because you've tried and failed. And then there's that doubt inside to say that, will I be successful? The second area is potentially there could be a lack of support from friends or family. So this could apply to either the workplace, or it could be that you have some issues, especially if children growing up in schools. And if you're not surrounded by the right company, if people are not there trying to motivate you, then it sometimes just creates doubts, thinking, can I really do this? And so I think support is very important, especially with the people around you. The other thing that came to mind was looking at other people's failures. So there's a tendency sometimes that the doubt is created because I've seen somebody that's tried to do that and they haven't achieved it. It could be as simple as weight loss, for example, which is quite common in the month of January. Everyone's looking at weight loss. And so if you've got friends that you're having a chat with and say, well, I've tried it for so many years and I always, the same, I can't seem to lose any pounds, and that could be, a deterrent for you to then try thinking, well, most of my friends have tried this, but it hasn't worked. I mean, this is quite a mundane example, but it could be any other goals that you're trying to set, that if you're looking at somebody, a friend, and you're relying on what they've done in their life, then that could be an area that could cause a problem for you to achieve your goals. And then negative thinking. So if your mindset's very much like, I can't because, I don't have the time, or I can't because, they've done it and it hasn't worked, and, I was reading about something and it, and that's put me off. And so you find so many comments like this, where if the mindset's very much around, I can't do something, then that could be another barrier for you then to move towards achieving your goals. So again, this all falls under the category of doubt. And then the last area that I've mentioned is about the lack of commitment at the outset. So sometimes what happens is you sit there and you make a list and jot down your goals, and then as soon as you start analyzing that goal, you think, well, it's going to take a lot of time. So you then just give up at the outset, or you try for a few days and you think, oh, do I need to still do the same routine for 6 months, 9 months, depending on what goals you've set? I haven't gone into the specifics because everybody's goals will be quite different. And so depending on what goals you've set in life, I guess it's a way to reflect inwards and check whether there's any doubt being created. So that's all about doubt. Then we come into the area of the common situations that people face in their daily life. So the most common one, I believe, at the moment that people are facing is around the financial situation. So in my line of work, that's quite apparent, because obviously that's something I do on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes it's about managing the day-to-day finance and trying to see what I can do so that I can try and avoid financial problems. So I was thinking, especially this time of the year, I normally get a very large credit card bill to settle because my spending is quite a lot. But then I'm very careful throughout the rest of the year, because I'm conscious that to the latter part of the year, every year, I seem to have a lot of renewals, whether it's car insurance or any other expenditure that I have to pay, especially for holidays. So I'm very mindful about that. But I know out there the situation is quite different. So that's an area I know that sometimes what tends to happen is that if you're stuck with your financial situation, it creates a lot of worry inside. And then what tends to happen is that due to that situation, it doesn't allow you to then prioritize something else you're planning to achieve in life. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is that we need to be conscious about where our time is going, because sometimes what tends to happen is that you think about a problem, you then try and find a solution about it, especially if it's a financial situation. You maybe take advice from somebody. Then there's a tendency then to worry about that situation time and time again. And so when you do that, you're not allowing yourself the time and the space to be able to focus on other priorities you may have in life. And so from reading the news, as in watching the news, reading newspapers, having a look at what's been happening, especially since after COVID, I have realized that this is a area that tends to come up time and time again. And so what I have found is that people who are in this situation find it very difficult then to find the motivation to be able then to try and focus on their priorities, as in the goals that they're setting for the new year. And especially the winter periods are sometimes quite difficult. Like I said, I normally get quite a large bill to settle in the month of January. So I'm very conscious every year that I'm aware of how much I'm spending, and I normally have a budget and make sure I stick to my budget. I am lucky enough that the credit card bill is generally my biggest commitment. So I'm quite fortunate that I don't have a huge level of outgoings. So I'm not burdened with any sort of financial situation. So again, it does help in life if you can manage your finances, because it allows you then to be more focused in what you do in your day-to-day life, and also achieving those goals you've set. Then relationships is another one that keeps coming up and up again, a lot more, especially again after COVID. So routines probably have changed, or there's issues around your working life, whether it's to do with colleagues at work, whether it's to do with a line manager, or it could be the fact that working from home might not be an ideal situation for you. Because I think this days is a hybrid model. Sometimes you work a few days from home, otherwise you travel to work, let's say 3 days, or spend 2 days working from home. So again, there's a change that happens. Some people might not like adjusting working from home. I know I don't. So I make a conscious effort I'm self-employed, so I make a conscious effort to go out, work from a coffee place or have client meetings. So I make sure that I'm not constantly at home Monday to Friday. But I guess everybody's work pattern is different. But again, that's an area I know, especially looking at relationships, that situations at work has an impact on kind of how you feel, because that's where you're spending a lot of your time. Then if you're married and you have children, there's also responsibilities there. And that could cause an issue, especially with children growing up, or there's a problem again at schools if they're having a hard time. So that's again an area I know. And then partner or spouse, again, that's a common area that you face on a regular basis. And so these are probably areas I would say for you to reflect on, to see whether I can internally see whether these areas are affecting what I'm trying to achieve for this year. Otherwise, what tends to happen is that the year finishes and then you look back and think, well, I tried, but it didn't work. But sometimes you don't kind of understand or realize why it hasn't worked. So the reason why these areas are being brought up is maybe for you to check and see whether is it relationships, is it financial situations that's causing me not to be able to focus and achieve the goals I've set. Okay. So home environment. So these are the other areas that I've come up with. So is it that you have conditions at home that is having an impact on you? So it could be the fact that there's a problem with just the general conditions like heating, or whether it's the fact that there's not enough space. I mean, if let's say if you're family and you have grown-up children, and if everybody's working from home, then you maybe don't have enough space, or there's a lot of disturbance that happens. So you can't concentrate on the work you're doing. And that, because of the fact there's no quiet space, you find you're getting more stressed working from home, because there isn't enough rooms for everybody to work from. The other area is politics. So again, it's been a huge talking point in the last 12 months especially. I know a lot of people are quite disappointed in kind of what tends to happen in the economy due to certain decisions that may be made by the government that has an impact on your day-to-day life. And also, I know businesses have been affected, and also your personal lifestyle will get affected eventually because what decisions are being made by the government. Sometimes there might be issues around how people feel around having a party to run the country, whether it's a Conservative Party, a Green Party, or a Labour Party. And sometimes you find that people are quite attached in terms of which party they want to run the government because of kind of what's happened in the past. And that could be an area that's basically causing you a lot of problems this year maybe, or last year rather. And that may have an impact on how you feel because of what's kind of been happening inside the government and all the issues that you hear about on a day-to-day basis. Health. So this is an interesting one. So sometimes if you have situations where you have already an existing condition that is impacting on your body, then because of that pain and suffering, it is not allowing you to stay focused and stable on achieving something, because you can't seem to then find the courage and the strength to try and achieve what you're trying to achieve in life due to health conditions. So again, that could be an area. And it might be that you try and find ways to be able to cope with that condition better, which then allows you to maybe hopefully focus on the goals that you've set. So the other area that I was thinking was around fear. So sometimes we find that there are certain fears that people hold on to, and what tends to happen after a while, that because there's so much fear and you keep on thinking about the fear, you become very sensitive. And what tends to happen sometimes is that if there's a noise that happens suddenly, you become very fearful. And what you want to be careful of is that you don't become too sensitive, because that also would create a lot of issues around you trying to be able to get to a point where, you want to try and achieve what you want to achieve, but because fear's there inside you, that's basically taking over your life. So I've put on there, handle with care. So when you try and travel somewhere and you've got an item that is very fragile, what happens? You get a box and then you got a stick on it that says fragile, handle with care. So what happens? People don't actually mix that cargo with the other cargo, or make sure that cargo is safe and put aside and not mix with the other cargo suitcases. So the reason why I've put it on there is because if you're very fearful and scared, sometimes what you'll do is you'll isolate yourself. And if you isolate yourself, then what happens is you can't get the help from the friends, family, to try and help you to get to where you want to get to. So jealousy is another area. So sometimes what tends to happen in life is that because you haven't achieved what you need to achieve in life, and it could be that you're in your 30s or 40s, and you have friends, that have been around you, they've had a very good education, they've been to university, had very good grades, they've managed to get their dream job, but you, on the other hand, haven't been able to get that, and sometimes jealousy can creep in. Jealousy also could creep in sometimes also when you're working with other people. It could be within the work environment where somebody is being promoted and they've not been around as long as you are. It could be another example where jealousy, could creep in. So could be an element of jealousy potentially there. It could be very subtle. I'm just giving some examples, but it could be an area to check and see if that's causing an issue. I mentioned about stress. So one of the things that I've been reading about recently is how stress can create, the stress will create an impact on the body anyway. So either it'll be your back, whether it'll be your neck, shoulders, or your teeth. Now, I had an interesting conversation with my dentist over a year ago. I think it was last summer. And I was told, like you do, have an x-ray and we'll have a sit down, have a chat. I knew I definitely had to see a hygienist to clean my teeth. And he sat down with me and he said to me, can you see how your teeth are? I'm like, yeah, I can see that they need to be cleaned. And he said, no, it's the way the shape of the teeth. It's telling me that you probably grind your teeth a lot. And I said, well, I don't think I do. He goes, yeah, you probably don't, but you probably do that in your sleep. And I said, well, I don't realize it. Maybe I do. He goes, are you stressed at work? And I said, well, it's a summer. Summer's a very busy period for me. I work as a mortgage broker, and my job is very stressful. I deal with solicitors all day long. I deal with valuers all day long. I deal with lenders, and it's a situation that's very stressful every single day. And he said to me, well, that's your answer. That's the reason why you're doing this. And I said, he goes, you've got wisdom tooth that's there, which obviously creates a problem, additional problem. I said, yeah, from time to time I have pains here. And he said, well, there's nothing much we can do. You just have to avoid being stressed at work, and the problem should just go away. And literally, after having that chat, within a few weeks, I noticed that the pain, literally within a week, just went away by itself. Just because of the fact that he mentioned about the fact that I probably have been grinding my teeth, and because of being tired and because of being a bit stressed at work, these are all the issues that can happen. But that's not the reason why I've put the word teeth in there, in the slides, because I was also listening to a very famous doctor who treats celebrities and is very, very famous out there. And he was mentioning about the impact that your teeth and the jaw has on the rest of your body. And I didn't really realize how much impact it has. So he said that basically because of the way the nerves are connected, if you don't look after your teeth, then you could have a problem on your neck, and after a while you could end up basically walking like this, not knowing that the actual cause of the problem was in here. And obviously I haven't really done a lot more research, which I tend to this year, but he was just mentioning about how important it is to look after your teeth so that as you grow older, you don't have all these issues. Now I know a bit about sciatica nerves and problems that you have with lower back that has impacts on your knee or the leg, because I've gone to see a physiotherapist, an osteopath, because I play badminton and tennis. Is on my leaflet that tells you what I do in my spare time. And when I've gone for consultations, whenever I've said that I've got a problem somewhere in the ankle or the knee, they've already said to me, well, let's look at your lower back first. So it's interesting that rather than looking at the pain point, which is either the top of the knee or the ankle, they've actually focused on the lower back and said, maybe it's to do with that. And generally that is normally the case. And so I'm very much aware that how the teeth plays an important part. At the same time, I know that if you go and have a session for, let's say, reflexology, then you'll find out how the feet play an important part, the rest of your body. So it's been interesting trying to understand how each part of the body can then have an impact on the rest of the body. And that, again, cause issues that you're thinking, well, I don't know why I'm suddenly having a pain. But by going to the specialist, you then realize that you need to look after either your back or the parts of the body like your teeth so that you don't incur all this pain. So again, for me, it's been a realization to make sure that I'm looking after my body so that I can carry on playing the sports that I play. And that's been one of my objectives this year, is how can I increase playing the sports that I play on a regular basis, because the way things are, I can't manage 3 or 4 times a week. So I need to then try and find a way how I can increase my stamina, not get injured. And so it's very important that I look after my body. So by knowing about these things, you become very, very conscious. So ego, like you know, can be a common problem. And with ego, what tends to happen? You're constantly basically using the word I. You want to be in control. When you have a lot of ego, you can't bear to hear insults. You can't bear to, be part of a team because it's what I say. and I'm always right, and these are the areas that stems from having ego. And I've put on here to say that when you have ego, you probably lack humility, because ego and humility doesn't go hand in hand. Then there's this area of lack of trust. It's quite a big area, because if there's a lack of trust within the self or others, then what tends to happen then is that there's always like a question mark on whether you're going to be able to achieve something, because if it's dependent on, let's say, a work environment, or whether it's friendship or whatever, then you always have then conflict all the time, because there's a lack of trust. And so again, that could be an area that's holding you back. Okay, these are the other areas. So anger and frustration. So if you're somebody that gets angry and frustrated very, very quickly, and it's part of your nature, again, that could be an area that's causing issues in your life. Lack of time. So you hear about this all the time. I just don't have time. I'm too busy. And so if you're in that cycle of too busy all the time, then it's very difficult then to step back, reflect, and see how I can achieve what I want to achieve, because probably what you've put down on what you want to achieve requires you to spend time to try and sort of get to where you need to get to. So maybe that could be an area that you need to explore. Boredom, that's another good one. Just a lack of interest, restlessness, just don't want to do anything. And then habit of looking at faults. So you're always critical and judgmental about others. So if that's something that's part of your nature, then again, it could be an issue that's creating a problem achieving what you want to achieve. Again, these are all areas, like I mentioned, where you can sort of have a self-reflection internally to see whether is this an area that's causing me a problem. The other areas that I've put down is gossiping. Don't need to explain what gossiping is all about. Holding on to the past, whether you've got a grudge, or whether it's failure of the past. So holding on to grudge. I know some people may have not spoken to a friend or somebody they know for the last 10 years just because they've said something, and maybe you're holding on to that, and that's stopping you from moving forward. Dependency, that's another one. So you need other people's support, you need other people around you, others you feel a bit insecure. So I guess whilst you're doing this reflection, and these are the areas I've just put down for you to reflect on, maybe these are the questions you should be asking you're asking yourself. What is it that's bothering me? Why am I not happy? What is stopping me? And why am I not motivated? So I've come up with these areas as questions because I have used that in my reflections. On a day-to-day basis, I'm always asking myself this question: what is that's bothering me? Why am I not happy? And what allows that? What does that allow you to do? It basically it's like a checking point. So, like I mentioned about the meditation that we have on the hour every hour, it could be a question like this that you ask yourself, and you say, "Well, what's bothering me?" It's interesting when you ask the right question, you can analyze internally and see what is it that's causing an issue, and then you might be able to resolve it very quickly or take advice. So the next area was about alignment. So alignment and align, I guess, are areas or words that are being used for when you go and do your MOT, so align your wills, or whether it's to do with your hip joints, like I mentioned about the body. But then in this context, we were looking at change of direction in the way of thinking. So the first step was to set the goals. The next step is to then focus. Because the first step is more about understanding what's wrong, then accepting, and then the next step is understanding then what do I need to do, what is the process. So how do I get back my focus? So this is kind of the bit where you need to do kind of that work, if that makes sense. So, a mindset shift. So you want to perceive things differently, not be too negative about things. Maybe constantly using the choice of words. It's okay. I do that a lot. When something goes wrong, I tell my mind that it's okay. And when you say it's okay, it's interesting. The problem just falls away, melts away. Because if you're okay, then technically there's no problem. So I use that word a lot to reinforce myself that there isn't really a problem. Behaviors. So you want to get yourself shifted from what I've shown you before on the slides to somebody who is always wanting to help others, being part of a team, accepting other people's ideas, keeping an open mind to possibilities. So this will be a person that's always putting their hand up and saying, I'll try that. I'm happy to be part of that team. Not then thinking about, oh, but this person has got these qualities, so I might find it a bit difficult to work with them. This person, I'm not sure, they're a bit lazy. You want to sort of avoid that mindset. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult for you then to be part of a team, because there's always going to be challenges when you're working with other people. Discipline, creating a timetable. I think without discipline, it's very, very difficult to be able to focus on your goals. Flexible and makes time to help others. So you want to be somebody who's very flexible. You don't want to use the word I'm busy all the time, because you'll always be able to make time when there's something important, especially if somebody needs help or they're looking for your advice. I have to do that in my work on a regular basis. I would get an urgent phone call. I would get a solicitor ringing me out of the blue. I could have a bank ringing me out of the blue. If I'm not flexible, then I can't help my clients. So I have to be flexible all the time. I don't think I've ever had a week where I've said to myself, oh, I've had no challenges, it's been so peaceful. I don't think I've had a week like that at all. And I don't expect to have a week like that because otherwise what will happen is if I start having a lot of expectations, if you've done the course here or if you've listened to any talks here, we normally say that expectations would lead to sorrow. So you don't have any expectations at all. If I have an expectation that somebody greets me every morning or somebody says hello and one day they don't and I'm upset, then you're falling into a trap. And then the other two areas, meditation, introvert, kind of go hand in hand. So you understand what that's about. So I'm not going to go into that too much. Choosing the right company. So I've been very careful the last 30 odd years since I've been practicing my spiritual lifestyle that I choose the right company, because I don't want to be surrounded by people who are negative or people that have doubts with themselves, because the color of the company, they talk about the color of the company. It will touch you and then it will impact your mind. I don't want to be surrounded in that environment. So I'm very, very conscious about which company I choose. And luckily, for the last 30 odd years, I've been very closely associated, and two of my friends are actually the trustees of the Brahma Kumaris. So I know definitely that I'm in the right company. And it's like I said to you, it really does make a difference, because if you've got the right company, you get inspired, you get motivated, you can then sustain your lifestyle. Self-belief is a big one, because if there's no self-belief, no self-respect, then it's going to be very difficult then for you to move on in life and achieve that goal. This is a big one, karma. So if you've not done the course already here, one of the lessons that they talk about in the Raj Yoga meditation course that is done here in the Brahma Kumaris talks about karma and understanding how karma makes an impact. So if you do good karma, then you're accumulating your account of blessings, and that will help you in your life. If you're not doing very good karma, you're giving sorrow to others, that's bad karma. And so what you give is what you get. So again, these areas I think is very important for you to understand and then bring that into your focus, because it will definitely help you towards achieving your goal. Living in the present. So it's a big one. Sometimes it can be very difficult to live in the present because you're thinking about what's happened yesterday, what's happened at work. You can imagine, I said to you, my work is very stressful. I'm deliberately using the word stressful because it can be, but if I keep on thinking every day that I've got problems and challenges, I can't live in the present for sure. And it'll have an impact if I come to an environment like this at the center, or if I'm helping out somewhere, because it'll show on my face. So I'm very conscious about living in the present. So once I finish work, and that's it. Well, when I was on holiday, my phone's always switched off, so nobody can get a hold of me. But that's something that I've chosen to do, because I know that if I allow myself to get disturbed, then that's going to cause a problem, in terms of getting refreshed, and try and sort of face a new year, because those challenges are not going to go away. They're going to come back again in the new year. Okay, what else? So once you have the focus, then okay, let's do traffic control, 7:30. So we can take this opportunity to just reflect on what I've just said. So, okay, so we're talking about creating a personality where you don't have any excuses. So you don't make any excuses when somebody is giving you a task or giving you an opportunity to do something that you've not done before, because otherwise it's very easy to make an excuse to say, well, I can't do this. Again, it's a mindset shift. And if you can avoid making excuses, then what will happen is that you will be able to fulfill or have a sense of fulfillment and excitement, which will help you to be able to be in a position where you're thinking, yeah, I like to do more of this because it's giving me happiness and also helping others. Like the fact that I'm here doing a talk after so many years. I deliberately said yes, because I know how much benefit it'll give me, because all this preparation I can see is also helping me achieving my goals. So I've mentioned already about living in the present. It becomes a nature, not critical of others, respect and equal treatment. That's an area again, it's very close to my heart, because like I said earlier, that if you have self-respect and you don't have expectations of others, then giving respect comes very naturally, and looking at everybody with an equal vision also becomes very natural, because there's no expectations at all. It's quite a deep area, and I think sometimes even some people, whilst following the spiritual lifestyle for many years, struggle with this area. Empathy, compassion, care for the self and others. It's like defining a job of a nurse. But maybe we need to become nurses so that we can help ourselves. And then having a generous heart. So you're always giving. So if you look at the pictures of the deities, the hands are always like that rather than like that. So you're always giving, and unconditional love. So I've put that because I know it's an area that really does make a huge, huge difference depending on how you see life, because the more you give, the more you get. But if you're giving unconditionally without any expectations, naturally you'll feel the sense of contentment, joy, happiness. It'll just come naturally. So focusing on unconditional love, again, is an area that I think if you have focus on this in your life, then you'll find life, with a lot of meaning, purpose, clarity. You feel good about yourself on a day-to-day basis. You feel that you are receiving blessings from others, and it's subtle. It's not something that you can visualize or touch and quantify. It's something that just happens naturally. It's kind of how you feel, and that's how you measure success. Is how am I feeling after doing that action with conditional love, and that's the way you'd measure whether it's working or not. That's the way I look at things. If I do something as an action, karma is action, then how am I feeling after that action? So what state of consciousness I've done that action? So on that basis, I can then measure whether there's success or failure. Does that make sense? The other areas, so gratitude. So happy with what I've got rather than wanting more and more. Detached but loving. This is one area of my focus this year. A very important area for me, especially because you're engaged in a stressful environment, whether it's working environment. I'm also part of so many other departments at our headquarters as well. So you're regularly involved, working with others. And if you're not very careful and you have attachment, then again, you find that you then create sorrow from time to time, because certain things can happen. Somebody says something or situation happens, you're not expecting it, and it tends to then have an impact on you. Whereas if you're detached but still loving and giving, then you're not getting impacted by the situation that's in front of you. So no worry and stress at all costs. So I mentioned about financial problems. So somebody that has imbibed the focus in making sure that they live within the means, they don't overspend. Because sometimes what tends to happen out there is that if I'm not feeling good about myself, I might go shopping and spend a lot of money and then realize a month or two later they've got a big bill to pay, and that could create unnecessary stress. So I'll put here, knowledge is power, because what I've just explained, if you have knowledge, it creates power within, power to change. Power to change doesn't come if you don't have the knowledge and understanding. It helps you also, the knowledge, to have a sharp and clear intellect to make the right decisions, to understand what is right, what is wrong. Should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? And again, karma plays a big part in that. So, positive affirmations. These are statements that you can again look at on a day-to-day basis and make sure that it allows you to stay focused. So I can do this. I am happy. I'm strong and confident. I am responsible for the way I feel. Others are not. I am content. I am peaceful. I'm in control. It will happen. And I'm confident. So these areas that you could practice when you're meditating, it will allow you then to focus on your goals. So that leaves us with renew. So changing directions, looking at the self with the renewed focus, with purpose, clarity, to get to where you want to get to. Because that becomes very, very easy once you've followed the process. Once there is that renewed focus, you'll find yourself energetic, always smiling. Somebody will see you as somebody that's reliable and trustworthy, with a can-do attitude. Success is always guaranteed, honest and confident. These are just kind of your personalities that just are there, and people will sort of say to you or say to their friends, say, this guy actually is honest and confident. This guy is actually reliable and trustworthy. And it happens naturally because you are focusing on those areas that will build your personality for you to be able to get rid of the old and then become somebody with a new way of living and thinking. Then you've got finding time to help others. So you find sometimes naturally it comes to that person. The old is finding time to help others. They're there when they're needed, when help is needed. Disciplined, humility, as I mentioned earlier. A person's always going to be humble if they're following this process, always. Always a well-wisher. Yeah, so wanting to sit down in meditation or talk to people, make time, have a phone call, always wishing them well. I think, again, that's an area that is quite apparent that you're following this process, that you find that person's always a well-wisher all the time. Even if someone's done wrong to them, they'll always wish well for the others. And again, that becomes very natural, very natural. And then feeling great. So that person's always smiling, like I said, always feeling great inside. So that's the end of the slides. I think we're almost done. So I wanted to just thank everybody for coming. I hope you found the slides useful. It's there for you to maybe pick on one or two things that you may want to focus on, to get rid of, and then use the tools that I've given you to reflect on and see whether that's allowing you to achieve your goals that you set in life. I will just finish on one thing, is that in order for you to be able to get to a point where you feel yourself renewed as a new person with a new mindset or a different way of thinking, you also need to find a way of sustaining that in the long run. So I've lived a spiritual lifestyle for 30 years. This is part of it, but the rest of it is about how do I sustain myself. So I need to be careful that I don't be careless. I use the meditation practices that the Brahma Kumaris are teaching me. I adopt that. I make sure that I'm constantly focusing on those areas, making a timetable, so that I don't fall into the trap where every year I need to then do this exercise. That makes sense. So sustaining it is very, very important. So if I know there's a lot of people watching online, so if you haven't done any of the courses here, like the meditation course or stress-free living course, I think we also do the anger management course. It's definitely worth exploring, because I've done these courses myself over the last 30 years, and I've seen the amount of benefit that it's given me. So I'll stop there. I hope everyone's found this evening useful. And I don't know if anybody has got any burning questions. We've got 2 or 3 minutes before we end. Everyone's okay? Good. Okay, so we'll just finish with a 1 minute meditation or 2 minutes meditation, just reflect maybe on one of the points maybe that I've mentioned in the slide, and try and see how you could utilize that within your meditation, which will help you then regain focus. Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay, great. So what I'd like you to do is just place your eyes just maybe on a point on the reflection of the light, so it allows you to rest your eyes and gain focus. If you take your attention inwards to the center of your forehead, once you take your attention inwards, focus on your breathing. Allow your breathing to slow down. Enjoy the few moments of silence. Allow your thoughts to slow down. Whilst you're focusing on the thoughts slowing down, you can create a thought. I am a peaceful soul. I am a peaceful soul. That now becomes your focus. I am a peaceful soul. This thought allows no other thoughts to come in the mind, and I repeat myself, I am a peaceful soul. I allow my mind to be peaceful. Whilst I hold on to that thought, I spread peace throughout my body. My body feels relaxed. And then I take a step forward and spread peace in the room. I feel I am surrounded by peace. The whole room is filled with peace. I can then take a step further and visualize the globe in front of my eyes and spread peace to the world. I take a few moments on experiencing peace, spreading the peaceful vibrations. I gently and gradually take my attention back into the room. Om Shanti.
So thank you very much for a very insightful talk. It did give all of us very practical tips that we can utilize throughout the year, and I'm sure everyone will agree. So a few announcements before we end. Next Tuesday we have a very special event called Building the Future We Choose, starting 2026 with hope and inner strength. And for this talk, we have an interview with Sister Jayanti, who is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris. And she will be interviewed by Vishwa Samani, who is a journalist, producer, and documentary maker for BBC Radio 4. So do invite your family and friends and also come. It will be a very special and interactive evening. This week, Monday and Thursday, we have got evening meditation online and in person from 7 to 7:30, and registration is required. This Sunday, we will not have our 10 a.m. meditation like we usually do, but we do have meditation from 3 to 4, and it will be in person. It will be on 18th January. And product of the week, we have got this really lovely book, which is 365 Days of Wisdom. It is a very resourceful book for 2026, as every page in this book has got a line of wisdom and some contemplation on that particular wisdom and also the application. So do browse it before leaving today. Otherwise, have a safe evening, have a safe journey back home, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.